Whew, I am not going to want to edit this later. Hello, and welcome to Gothiture, where normally we would be talking about Gothic literature and dark romanticism. However, today's going to be a little bit different. First off, I want to apologize for taking so long to post something else. I've had an upper respiratory thing, a sinus thing that turned into a double ear infection, and I'm still trying to get over all of that. But I did not want to wait any longer to put this out. This episode is also going to be different in the fact that it's not going to be scripted. I'm not sure if I would be able to do this any justice if I completely scripted this thing. So the format is going to be slightly different, but the information will still be here. A few days ago, I came across an article from the New Yorker on their website. I will leave a link in the description down below, from February 27th of this year, called "The End of the English Major." And I kind of want to talk about it. I know that even when I was going to school for English, it was always something that was kind of mocked. Now, mind you, I graduated with my bachelor's in 2017, and then I finished my master's in 2019, right before the pandemic. And the only time I never got any sort of crap for being an English major was when I was getting my master's. And that was because everybody thought it was so cool because I was studying Gothic literature. And the people around me had never heard of somebody focusing on that. So everybody thought that was just like the coolest thing. But I've always loved English because it's so interconnected with some of the other humanities that you can't just learn or teach about English. Example, I have never been in an English course where there was not some history being taught in some way, shape, or form. I took an early US Lit course, and I learned more history on what happened in the Americas before Columbus, and directly after Columbus than I did in any history course. I took an early British literature course where I learned more about art and how art interconnects with the literature and the history of the time than in any other course. And that's what I loved about it. I was never just getting one education in one thing. Sure, it wasn't as deep as a history major or an art major, but it always felt like it was really well-rounded in the humanities, at least within that little sphere of the humanities, I should say. This article really kind of made me think, like, is it not so much, is it really going down? Is enrollment really going down? But what are the effects of enrollment going down? What are the effects on society as a whole when enrollment goes down. Now, right under the illustration, it says since 2013, the study of English and history has dropped by a third. The number of STEM degrees, meanwhile, is soaring. Don't get me wrong, we need people in STEM is important, but so are the humanities. Just not in the same way. Now, the beginning of this article really focuses on Arizona State University and enrollment numbers there, what's going on there, faculty, why it's weird that these numbers are going down. Now, they said that from the start of the pandemic, the numbers of English majors on that particular campus fell from 953 to 578. Records indicate that the number of graduated language and literature majors decreased by roughly half, as did the number of history majors. Women's studies lost 80%. These numbers going down it makes me wonder if people saw the humanities as more of like a, how should I say this, a fluff major. Like not something you could actually, get work in. Unless you wanted to be like a professor or a journalist. I can tell you right now, directly after I got my education, I went out and I was looking for jobs. And the jobs that were available, at least at the time, within the English sphere that were legitimate jobs in English, I would honestly be surprised if people went after them. There was a lot of entry-level work, entry-level pay, but they wanted you to have the experience of somebody who's been in the game for 5 or 10 years. Not everybody has the opportunity to work within the field for 4 or 5 years, which for a lot of these people is the time it takes to get your bachelor's. It's also a required thing. It's not just a recommended, we would like this. No, these are required things. I saw one. It was entry level. They wanted 8 years of experience. And I was just like, what person is going to have 8 years of experience coming out of the gate of their bachelor's if they got their bachelor's right after high school? Are you going to count a paper route? Because if not, they're not going to have that experience. They would have to continue working at wherever it is they're working at, provided that they have a job in that field for a few more years before they can go after the job they actually want. and then hope it's still there. Okay, I went off on a tangent. Okay, so I went off on a tangent. We're going to get back to the article at hand. Whew. Now this article goes on to talk about how awesome the ASU faculty is in the English department at that school. They talk about having 71 tenure track English professors, 11, which is including 11 Shakespeare scholars, 2 English professors won Pulitzer Prizes. I mean, I would have loved to have been in that English department. Could you imagine? I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be taking any of the Shakespeare stuff. I have my own things with Shakespeare, but that sounds like an amazing department to me. I would love to even spend a semester in that department. Later on, as the article goes on, it talks about how it's not just Arizona State that is hemorrhaging humanities majors. They looked at enrollment figures from 2012 to 2020. Ohio State's main campus fell by 46%. Tufts lost nearly 50%. Boston University lost 42%. And it says here, and I'm quoting this, Notre Dame ended up with half as many as it started with, while SUNY and Albany lost almost 3/4. Even standard bearing liberal arts colleges saw their humanities majors fall by nearly half. I'm going to give you another quote here. In 2018, the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point briefly considered eliminating 13 majors, including English, history, and philosophy, because there was not enough people entering into these studies. What has happened that has made the humanities so undesirable? Is it the lack of desirable jobs? I think it takes a special kind of person to be in the humanities, because at some point you know that being in the humanities is not going to make you famous. It's not one of those fields of study that was meant to. You get into it because you love it, because you have a passion for it. Because somewhere deep within you, you know that in the future, that is needed. And I'm sure the argument can go, well, we have Google. We can look up whatever we want. Yeah, we could. We could look up whatever we want. But if you don't have a passion for, say, history, you're not going to look up history. not until you're curious about one specific thing, and then that's what you're going to look up. We need people who's willing to just go after their passions. And it's hard in this day and age, and I understand that, because you gotta think about focusing on something that you're gonna have a job in later. That's not easy. Are the humanities becoming something that you have to be brave, for lack of a better word, to pursue? Perhaps what needs to happen is we need to be listening to the students more. But the question is, if we listen to the students more and gave the students what they want, would that actually bring enrollment up? Or would it just reinforce the enrollment that we already have? The author went to talk to Harvard's Dean of Undergraduate Education, who's also an English professor. And she had two interesting things to say. First off, that the young people are concerned about the ethics of representation, of cultural interactions. And she goes on to say that the professors are thinking about that too. In this new cultural shift that we're going through, these things are happening. Professors are bringing in more diverse authors, more diversity in general. These things are happening. It might not just be happening as quickly as the students would like, but these things are happening. The second thing she said I found interesting was, the last time I taught the Scarlet Letter, I discovered that my students were really struggling to understand the sentences as sentences. Like having trouble identifying the subject and the verb. Their capacities are different, and the 19th century is a long time ago. That kind of hurt. That hurt me in a way, because that is some of the basic stuff that you learn when you are taking English courses, not at the collegiate level, but at your high school and junior high and even elementary school. You're learning what a verb is. You're learning what the subject is. So many, it seems like so many college professors are expecting their students to know these things. And at that point, they should. They should know what the subject of a sentence is. They should know what verbs are. Especially if they're going to be getting into that, majoring into that. Now, mind you, I have my own unpopular opinions about majoring in English. And I know it's hypocritical to a point, because I myself majored in English. But knowing the basic parts of your sentence is a foundational thing, a foundational piece. It's foundation work of being an English major. Even if you don't necessarily remember exactly what something is, take a grammar course. When I was getting my undergrad, that was a required course. We had to take a course on grammar. And I don't think that these professors are expecting you to be the grammar police. But I do think that they're expecting you to at least know the basics. And if these, kids don't know the basics, then the collegiate professors cannot properly teach them stuff at that level because they're not at that level. Which brings me to this idea of, are people not going into it, into the humanities, into English in general, specifically, I should say, because they don't have that foundational work of how early do you think this foundational work needs to start being taught? Now, I remember really getting into this when I was in junior high, so like 7th, 8th grade, like we were really getting into it. And then we would do a little bit each year through high school. So that's at least 6 years of getting foundations done. So I can't fault people for forgetting a few things. And I'm not going to. But to have seemingly no knowledge of it is just boggling to me. The next paragraph makes a very good point. Some students say they want to read a specific type of text, and that's the only thing that they want to read. They don't want to read things like Dickens, or Shakespeare, or, Twain, or anything like that. What they don't realize is that the people that they want to study read those authors. So whether they want to believe it or not, they were an influence upon those authors. They want to go straight to the end. They don't want to start at the beginning. History is not pretty. It will probably never really be pretty. But you still have to start from the beginning. You have to get through that really nasty, ugly beginning to get to the parts that you find beautiful. That's not going to be fun. But it's foundational pieces of that education. So is that it? Is that why enrollment is down? They don't want to do the foundational work. I know it sounds like I'm being really hard on these people coming into the study, but I mean, I'm genuinely curious. What is it about this that they're just not into? Some people might view the humanities as more hobby based. What's I mean, don't get me wrong, it makes a great hobby, but culturally, society wise, these people are needed. People who can communicate. Written communication are needed. We're going to need people to write history. We're going to need artists. People enjoy art. Gotta have an artist to have art to enjoy. I'm looking at the time and I've already been recording at this point for almost an hour. And I haven't even barely hit the halfway mark on this article. Like I said before, I'm going to put this article in the description below so you can go and read it yourself. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about English and the humanities enrollment going down, and let me know if you think that there's any way that the university system can change to make it better, to make it all better. At least a little bit. So, thank you for listening, and be sure to, if you like this, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you here in a couple weeks. Bye.